Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Stories That Inspire Us podcast. I'm your host, Janice Malillo, and today I have an amazing guest on. And I just want to welcome my listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. We are also simulcasting and broadcasting through that application. So welcome to all my live listeners. Thank you, as always, for being here. Now, before I introduce this amazing young lady, I do want to let people know that we are going to chat about probably a few sensitive subjects concerning mental health, but all with the clear intention of helping others. So without further ado, I want to, introduce my amazing guest to the Stories podcast, Carolyn Ferrick. Welcome. I am so excited to have this discussion with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to have this conversation. And to anybody and everybody listening out there, hello. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm just so excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Now, you are as well a podcast host and the founder of the podcast and your business, The Search for Serotonin. And that I know as a young woman, Carolyn, you have my gosh, experience a lot. And I'm saying a lot in all capitals with all the exclamation points. And you're using your voice in such a way to speak up, but share your story, all with the intention to educate others on mental health. And I always say that we are not mental health experts ourselves. We are only experts where it concerns us. So let's start out with your story, because yours is really touched my heart.
Yeah. Like you said, I've been through a lot, and my story, I could talk for hours about all the stuff that I've gone through. But I'll try and keep it short for everybody here today. So I have struggled with severe high functioning anxiety for most of my life. My first memory of panic attack, anxiety attack was when I was 5 years old, because I grew up in a very religious-based household in the Catholic Church, and I attended 11 years of Catholic school. So from a very young age, I had all of those ideas instilled in me. And my first panic attack was when they explained, the concept of death to us. So that really started the anxiety triggers. And then I've also suffered from clinical depression as well as seasonal depression. That started around when I was 14. So when I was in high school, my mental health was terrible. I had my first suicide attempt actually at my senior year of high school. And then my second suicide attempt was less than a year later, my freshman year of college. And at that point, I wasn't labeling it as mental health. I was saying, oh, I don't qualify because I came from a home with two parents and I have three sisters, and there was food on the table, and my parents were always able to provide for us. And we went to Catholic school and played a bunch of sports. So, I was like, I don't qualify to struggle like this. I don't qualify to be depressed. And so I didn't talk about it for a really long time. And I had a lot of struggles in high school and college with trying therapists, trying medication, all this different stuff, but I wasn't really open to it. So fast forward to post-college, I graduated in 2019 with a communications degree. And it wasn't until actually mid-pandemic that I really started taking my mental health seriously, because I'd graduated from college, tried to get things going, didn't work. And then in the pandemic, you really can't hide from it. So I started seeing my current therapist, got on my current medications. I was like, we're getting into this. Did that for about a year. And then last summer is actually when I had the idea and the inspiration to start the podcast, because I was just like winging it. Like you said, I'm not a professional. I was like, let me just try whatever I can. And I was like, why not share this with other people? So I started the podcast, officially launched in November of 2021. So we've been rocking for less than a year. But, I've just been trying to openly share my experiences. And then I forgot a diagnosis. My big one that I've actually been working on through the podcast is my diagnosis with OCPD. So that's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So that is like OCD, but completely different. It's a perfectionism personality disorder, and it has a lot of not so fun side effects. So I've been trying to really use my platform to educate people on OCPD because it is more common and more people have OCPD. But until I was diagnosed, I had never heard of it. And everyone I talk to, they're like, I've never heard of this either. So that's really been my focus in the last year of the podcast, is just trying to spread awareness on OCPD any way that I can.
And I think that is so beautiful, really, on so many different levels. I want to go back to probably a very rough time. You had mentioned a first suicide attempt. And what I picked up from that as well, what you said, and then you said you had a second suicide attempt, but then you said you felt that you did not qualify. And I find that heartbreaking. Were you able to, at that time, to express at least that to someone, whether it be a therapist or a teacher or somebody?
So this is actually an interesting story. So my first suicide attempt in high school, I just went into my mom's bathroom, found some old like prescription pills from my sister's surgery a couple years back, and I just took what was ever in the bottle, and I was like, I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning. Then I woke up the next morning and I didn't tell anybody about it because, like at that time in my family, there was so many other things going on, and, opening up about your feelings wasn't really like a thing. So I didn't tell anyone about that. I just like went off to school, did my thing. And I got to school, it was like a couple months into my first semester, freshman year. And I had the other incident where I like got blackout drunk, attempted suicide. All of my friends were like terrified. My boyfriend at the time was like, you need to call your parents and do something about this because this is like too much. So I called them, they came and picked me up. And then they took me to an, hospital inpatient facility. They were trying to get me admitted. And I explained everything that was going on. I told them about the attempt the year prior. And it came back to me that the doctors decided that I didn't have a mental health disorder. I had a drinking problem and I just needed to stop partying so much. So I was completely dismissed. And after that, I've just shut down even more because I was like, okay, it's now confirmed you don't have a problem. So like, don't complain about it, just push through your life kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were dismissed in an instant with
Yeah.
with no regard, even after telling them that you had a first suicide attempt in your high school year. You took the rest of the pills of your sisters from a surgery a few years before, and now this other thing had happened. When did you take your foot off I often refer to putting my foot on the gas pedal and taking it off. When did you put your foot down and say to somebody that would listen to you, not just hear you, but listen with intent, listen with love, listen with purpose? When did that happen?
Yeah. So like my sophomore year, I tried to get on medication, but I did it because it was more of like a forced thing. My friends around me were like, you need to figure like yourself out kind of deal. It wasn't like a really like loving and supporting like push to get on medication. So it wasn't actually until my senior year of college, I actually was able to open up to a professor because one of my best friends and roommates at the time had dropped out due to mental health reasons. She got herself admitted. And at that point of the year, I was like, everything's been so overwhelming. I don't know where to turn. Like she was really my support system because we understood each other kind of deal. So I finally opened up to this professor and I was like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. And she really just listened to me, heard me out, met me with compassion, met me with the like patience and respect that I had been waiting for. And she, had a conversation with me saying, there's no shame in getting on medication. A lot of people take it, sometimes people need extra help and there's no shame in that. And so that's kind of when I started getting back into medication and therapy before getting like really serious about it. So it was like 3 years later.
Wow. So you go through this, the first, you went through the second, college, all this stuff going on, being told you're feeling like you don't qualify, then you're taken to an in-person facility. They show you no compassion, and then your only support system, your friend in your senior year of college, just had a meltdown. That must have been, I'm saying that, I'm repeating the words, I've listened and I'm taking in what you're saying. And I'm feeling the weight of that myself. And I can't even imagine as a young woman being in your predicament and going through that. I'm blown away. So now the pandemic happens and you start your podcast, and you obviously you're in a spot. But let me back up just a second here. I got all these thoughts, and yeah, I know it's the blonde roots, but just bear with me a second here. So all of these things are happening in such a fast fashion, and now you're at that point where you've got this communications degree, and then the pandemic happens. And as we've heard so many stories with the pandemic, and not only young women, but men as well, going through such mental health anxiety. And one person recently described it to me as she felt she had an installment plan with suicide. And for her, that was the catalyst. What was your catalyst at that point? Like, now you're on medication, you have a specific diagnosis. But I think what happened out of that was something amazing. You're starting your podcast. And the name of your podcast is The Search for Serotonin.
Yeah, that is.
That's very catchy, by the way. I love that name.
Thank you. Well, my background in communications, it's a lot of PR and marketing and like all that kind of stuff. So I was really fortunate to have that background. But you mean my catalyst for starting the podcast, or my catalyst for kind of
The
like starting this
catalyst,
journey?
I guess, for like saying, okay, here I am, great, I have this diagnosis, now I'm on medication. What was the catalyst for you where you said, okay, I'm doing this? Like, I am doing this.
Yeah. So my catalyst moment, I've had a lot, I've had a lot of moments where I'm like, I'm done going through these cycles. I'm done feeling crappy all the time. I'm done going through the highs and lows. But I've continued to repeat a lot of the patterns. So the biggest catalyst moment, I think, for me was right before I started the podcast. So July, August of 2021, a year ago, it's time. I was working full time in higher education. I had started my master's in communication because, I was like, oh, if I'm going into higher ed, I need, to get a master's and then like a doctorate and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, really thinking about it. I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not happy. I'm still miserable. My mental health is getting worse and worse as every day goes on. I just wanted to finally, take control of my life, and for once in my life, do the things that I wanted to do. And so I went to see a tarot card reader, and she gave me this reading, and it said, in 3 months, you're going to get this big opportunity and you should take it and you should trust it. Don't question it. She was like, this is your cup. You have to take the cup. And so it was my first time getting a tarot reading done. And I was like, whatever. Okay. No big deal. I don't really believe it or whatnot. And then 2 weeks later, I had my first broken bone. I had to get major surgery, a bunch of metal put into my ankle, all of this stuff. So I wasn't able to go into work. I wasn't able to leave my couch for 4 months. I couldn't even shower on my own. I had to relearn how to drive, all of this stuff. And so during that time, I decided, I can sit here for the next however many months that I'm stuck inside and continue to just get into a darker place, or I could do something about it. So I thought back to, when was the last time I was happy? Like, when was I doing stuff that I was like, oh my God, this is me. I love this. And so I thought back to childhood. And, I really love music. I used to be in like musicals as a kid. I love arts and crafts, painting, coloring, all that kind of stuff, like anything like that. So I just started, every day I would wake up, do my makeup, even though I wasn't going anywhere because it made me feel good. And I'd get out my coloring book, or I'd read a book, or I'd journal, or I'd do all these things. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is fun. And so I kept learning and growing in that period. And it evolved into the start of the podcast. I figured out how to make it a business. I figured out how to, edit, record. I did this all on my own. No one was here holding my hand, showing me the way. I'm completely self-taught. And so having that time to really reconnect with who I was before all of the bad stuff happened really just led me to the podcast and being able to finally commit to, using my voice and sharing my story.
And that's amazing, because when you were describing your childhood, you were saying, you had a loving family, siblings, you grew up in a really solid family foundation, and many people don't have that. So I feel as though maybe, and please obviously correct me if I'm wrong, you're on the path of what you thought you should be on. Like, okay, I have this great family. This is what I like. This is the path that I need to take. But the beauty of your story that I see is what you just described, that you found your own path. You self-taught yourself. Before, you were working at this company, had this injury, but really that injury probably was your foot coming off the gas pedal and gave you that pause for reflection.
Yeah, I've talked about it a lot in therapy with my therapist, and she's amazing. And she says, like, our bodies and timing and the universe, it really listens. So, I was sitting there saying, I don't want to go to work anymore. I don't want to do grad school. I'm miserable. I'm crying every day. I'm like stressed. Like, I had like so much like acne on my face and scars from like picking my skin because I would get so anxious. But she was like, the universe wanted you to slow down and realize, stop going in this direction. Because like you said, I'm 25 years old right now. But, I was like, okay, everyone goes to college, you go to college, you get a job that makes you money, and then you're able to like buy a house. And then if you go to grad school, you get more money and a better job. And I was going through those motions, like going through those things that I thought would make me happy. And, when I broke my foot, I was like, wait, no, like, I don't have to do this. Like, everyone's working remote now. Everyone's starting their own companies, everyone's taking control into their own hands. So why not me? Like, it's my turn. Let's do it.
And I think you're absolutely correct. And I think it's very interesting that more kept on coming up.
Mhm.
You wanted more out of life. You saw a different direction. And as you were, talking about your therapist and her saying something to the effect that this is the universe pushing you in a different direction. But I don't think it was so much a push. I think it was, you were at that fork in the road. And I want to point out, your therapist was 100% correct. And I thoroughly believe that. But it was you who made that decision. Like, you taking control of your more, and why not? It wasn't anymore that you didn't feel you didn't qualify. You took that more and said, this is what I like to do. Hell yeah, why not?
Yeah, yeah. It was like, now looking back on it, it was a really powerful time in my life. When I was like in the moment, it was miserable. But looking back on it, that was really like one of the first decisions in my life that I was like, this is 100% made by me. Nobody else has a stake in this decision. Like, I'm doing it for me 1000%. I have a boyfriend currently. We live together, but he was nothing but supportive. He's like, whatever you want to do, I'll support you. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. But yeah, just taking back my control over my life and giving myself what I've always wanted. That was really a defining moment for me.
I bet. And I want to go back to the name of your podcast, The
Yeah.
Search for Serotonin. You mentioned obviously you have a communications degree, but how did that name come up?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to do something regarding mental health because when I was brainstorming, I was like, I want to have a podcast. I want to share my story. I want to talk about stuff. And mental health was like a big theme to that. And so I was thinking, what do I want to achieve with this? I really don't know. I was like, I just want to talk about my experiences, get professionals on, maybe to educate more about some different topics. And so I was running through, I had like 4 or 5 different names, and that one, was on the list. And I was like, that's really where I'm at in my life right now. I'm sick of being miserable. I'm sick of, the repeating patterns, always feeling like, depression or anxiety is in control, not me. And so I was like, why not take people on this journey from going to my lowest point in my life, and they can come through all of this with me, what I learn and how I grow. And it's my personal search for happiness. So, serotonin is the happiness chemical. So why not, lean into that and focus on, happiness, because I look at myself as a positive person. I try and, be somebody who is bubbly and boosts other people's mood. So I was like, that's a nice name. It's, really like, it's a good ring to it. And the colors I used are positive. So when people see it, they're not going to be like, oh, this is a depressing mental health podcast. It has more of like a lighter tone to it.
It does, but on your one sheet there, your PR page, you really shared what you were about. But in doing that, you were respecting your journey, saying, hey, here I am, and this is where I am in my life. This is where I was. And it's not something that you disregard, meaning you went through all this stuff, like you have come out the other end, but this is something that you work on every day. It's not a one and done situation. And that's, I think, so fitting for you in your podcast, The Search for Serotonin.
Yeah, it's an everyday, it's constant, you're working at it every day. I've recently started diving into the subconscious work because everyone said it's so helpful. But, I was crying this morning over stuff that was coming up from the subconscious work. So, it is still like an everyday battle, and just kind of giving myself that space to have this outlet to share my stories. A really big thing with OCPD is the perfectionism aspect. You think your way is like the only way of doing things. You're very rigid and controlling, and you want to make sure that you can like maintain this image. And so that's what I really kind of stuck to my whole life, was even though I was going through like all this bad stuff, I would still just put on this happy face and make it look like my life was perfect all of the time, or everything was great, or I was so successful because I was getting all these opportunities in college and things like that. But in reality, I was alone most of the time. I was crying most of the time. And so I was like, why not show people, my imperfect side? Because I need to work on, loosening control of my OCPD. So why not, use this space as a way to show up imperfectly and just say, here's where I'm at this week. This is kind of what you get. This is what I'm going through.
And what I love about what you just said, I think sometimes we think of social media. Think of social media in terms of, hey, here's my life and I'm all great and I'm all duded up. And like, I'm very honest and open, and I am always having a bad hair day, but whatever. But the point I'm trying to get to is, I think we create too many filters. And you just like are like, okay, whatever, this filter is going away, because you're peeling back those layers in such a way where you're honoring your journey, but you're continuing forward. Like, that is flipping huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I really wanted to help inspire other people because I kept it in for so long. I like let it consume me and I was in a constant state of fight or flight. My nervous system was really messed up. And now that I'm on medication and everything, it's so nice to see that there's another way of living. But, me not talking about anything didn't help me. It only kept making things worse and worse. So I was like, what if I just talk about it, lay it all out there, it's going to be embarrassing, it's going to be shameful, it's going to be humiliating, but that's the honest truth and I shouldn't have to be ashamed of any part of my life because it's my story. It's gotten me to where I am today. If someone out there felt like I did when I was 14 years old and comes across my podcast, that's what I really was trying to convey with this. Like I was really just speaking to younger me before I got depressed. And so I'm just hoping to help anybody who's struggling and alone and doesn't know who to turn to.
So I love what you just said. You're really reaching out and speaking to that younger you. Now you are here in this space today. What is one thing that you would say to your younger you?
Oh my God. I would tell her, you're still gonna get anxious. I got anxious before I sat down to record this. You're still gonna have bad days and bad moments, and things are gonna get really, really hard before they get better. But something that I wasn't told when I was younger that I would have loved to tell myself is you have everything you need inside of you, even though it doesn't feel like it, even though you might not see it now, but you are capable, you are valuable, and you are going to do some amazing things, but you just have to, let your walls down and let people see you for who you are. So,
Carolyn, I just got the chills when you said that. Like that is so beautiful and so poignant. And I have another great question for you.
I love good questions, so I'm here for
Okay.
it.
So let's say you're in my respectable age bracket, and we're not going to go there as far as exactly what my age is. And I think I may have already said it. But let's say 15 years from now, when you look back, maybe you look back at today and when you did this podcast, what would the older Carolyn, what might she say to the Carolyn of today?
I like this question. This is a good question. I hope in 15 years I can look back and tell my current 25-year-old self, just keep holding on because even though you're not where you want to be, you're still making progress and it's all going to fall into place one day. You're going to get to accomplish all those big goals that you suppressed for a really long time. It's all going to work out like it always does. And hopefully I can tell myself that I am finally happy and this is what pushed me to find happiness. So,
And by the way, everyone, and I want to welcome everyone again that is listening in live on the Wisdom Audio app. She hit just right now. Carolyn has the most beautiful smile, and I encourage you to, maybe watch the YouTube video of this because it's just amazing to see her smile is speaking volumes right now. It
wait,
really.
that's like one of my biggest insecurities is my teeth have always been really messed up because I would grind them from how bad my anxiety was. So the fact that that made my whole day. That made my whole week.
Oh, I'm so glad because I speak from the heart. I speak the truth and I want to show up authentically myself. And I love how these conversations evolve that it's really all about inspiring others to take action in their own lives. What is a big goal that you have for yourself and your business with the podcast? Where do you see that going?
Yeah. So I am actually at a really interesting point in my business and the podcast. I want to move more into offering like podcast management services for my business to help other people who want to do a podcast, but don't necessarily want to learn all the tech, the software, learn how to schedule on a hosting platform, all that kind of stuff. So from the business side, that's kind of the goal, is to help other people get into podcasting because it's been so great for me. But life goal wise, my next big goal that I have on my list is to get out of Pennsylvania. I've lived in Pennsylvania my whole life. I went to college here. And thank goodness my boyfriend also is an avid traveler, loves going new places. And so we're at a point in our lives where opportunities are aligning, and we're kind of getting to the point where we're like, well, let's just move. We're young, we don't have kids, we have nothing tying us here. Like, let's move. So hopefully moving to a new state is in the cards for my future.
Well, no, that sounds very exciting. And
Yeah.
I do definitely see that happening. Do you think your travels will be more of like maybe a tiny living, like, camper style, or just that you would move out a state to another state?
Yeah, so ideally, we'd love to move to Colorado, more like Aurora area near Denver, but not in it. And so then that way we could, go experience the West Coast, have a stable home environment, but then, be so much closer to all these places we've never been that we've been talking about going. So we can either get quick flight there or drive there or, start doing some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, like we're both just like down to travel whenever. We've both been out of the country a couple times. So yeah, we're always just about new experiences.
And that is amazing. So, Carolyn, how can our viewers and listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can find the Search for Serotonin podcast on YouTube. We're now on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. You can follow the Search for Serotonin on Instagram. It's at the Search for Serotonin. I post all podcast updates, any business updates, all on that page. But if you want to connect with me personally, you can find me on Instagram at Carolyn_Ferrick, and then Carolyn Ferrick on Facebook or LinkedIn.
Wonderful. And of course, I will make sure that all of your contact information is in the show notes. This has been such an amazing conversation today. And the search for serotonin is so fitting for you. And I am so excited on where these travels are going to lead you to, because I know it's going to be amazing. I want to thank you so much for being here with me today and with our Wisdom app listeners. It's just been, I've loved every minute of this.
I have too. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. We've connected during this conversation and our pre-conversation before recording, but you literally found me on days that I really needed like to hear something good, and both of our conversations have left me feeling just so, full and overwhelmed with joy. So thank you for doing what you do and continuing to be a positive light for not only me, but everybody listening out there.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And that truly is what the mission of Stories That Inspire Us is. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, these are the stories that inspire us. Today, I was truly inspired by you, Carolyn. You are a light. You are the search for serotonin.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And to everybody out there listening, thank you for hearing out my story. And something I always tell my podcast listeners is remember that this world is better with you in it. And always remember to live loud. Don't make yourself small, live loud.
I love that. Live loud.
Yeah.
I'm going to sign off of Wisdom right now. Again, I want to thank all of my listeners on Wisdom. These are truly the stories that inspire us. And if you have a story to share, your story is that important. And I want to hear from you. My name is Janice, the host of Stories That Inspire Us with Carolyn Ferrick, and we will see you again real soon. Hey, Facebook. Thank you all so much for being here today. I always like to obviously reach out to anyone who can hear my voice, who's listening to my guest's voice, wherever you may watch or hear the podcast. Truly, your life matters. You are not alone. Again, I want to do another sign off and thank Carolyn again. These are the stories that inspire us, and somebody needs to hear your story. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Carolyn, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.